It was supposed to be a surprise. That was the plan. Just a small gesture, something simple and thoughtful. A reminder of us. I stood outside Maple and Pine, this warm little cafe tucked between a vinyl record shop and an independent bookstore, holding a bouquet of white lilies. They were Ellie's favorite, though she hadn't bought them for herself in years. She used to say they made the house feel peaceful. Clean. Like a quiet moment captured in a vase. I'd gotten off work early that Friday and thought, why not bring a little peace back home? Ellie told me she had a meeting tonight. Work drinks, she said casually over breakfast, stirring cream into her coffee like she hadn't been emotionally absent for the past few weeks. Just a few of us from the agency. Shouldn't be too late? She kissed me on the forehead like she always did, soft, habitual, almost mechanical. I tried not to notice how she avoided eye contact. Again. So I figured I'd surprise her. Swing by, say hi, maybe pay for their drinks. Be the supportive husband. Show her I was still here. Still trying. I parked a block away and walked up slowly, taking in the early spring air. It had rained earlier, that light misty kind of rain that smells like pavement and old leaves. The sky was still a bit gray, the streets glossy under street lamps. My heart was pounding for no good reason. I felt nervous. Hopeful, maybe? Foolish, definitely. When I reached the cafe, I paused under the sign, a soft neon glow spelling out Maple and Pine in looping cursive. I looked through the window. And that's when I saw them. Ellie was seated at a corner table halfway into a glass of wine, her hands wrapped around the stem like it anchored her. She was leaning across the table toward a man, tall, stylish, with a gray coat draped over the back of his chair. He was laughing. So was she. The way she looked at him, light in her eyes, head tilted slightly to the side, lips parted in mid-smile, it hit me like a*****ker punch. I hadn't seen her look like that in years. Not at me, anyway. He reached out and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. And she let him. Then, as if time folded in on itself, they kissed. It wasn't some quick panic thing. It was slow. Familiar. Her hand on the back of his neck. His thumb brushing her cheek. It was the kind of kiss people fall into when they think they're safe. Unwatched. When they're used to it. I stood there frozen. Like a mannequin holding a bunch of flowers no one asked for. My chest tightened. My brain refused to process it. There was no maybe. No misunderstanding. No doubt. That was Ellie. My wife. Kissing another man with the kind of tenderness I hadn't felt from her in longer than I cared to admit. I must have shifted or moved because she looked up. Our eyes met. And in that second, that awful, stretched out moment, her face changed. Not to shock. Not to guilt. Not even to panic. She looked annoyed. Like I had just interrupted something she didn't want interrupted. She said something to him, grabbed her coat, and marched out like she was doing me a favor. She didn't even glance at the flowers. Then, she said, exasperated, like I'd shown up late to a PTA meeting, not caught her making out with another man in public. What are you doing here? I just stared at her. I couldn't find my voice. My hand, still holding the bouquet, felt heavy. I started, but my throat closed up. I couldn't form a single sentence. She looked away and sighed. Look, it's not what it looked like. Classic. I almost laughed, but the sound caught in my chest. I don't have time for this right now, she added quickly, eyes darting toward the curb. Can we just talk about it later? She flagged down a cab with the efficiency of someone who'd done it before. She didn't wait for me to respond. As she climbed in, she hesitated just for a second, hand on the doorframe. Please don't make this bigger than it is. And just like that, she was gone. I stood there for I don't know how long, letting the silence settle around me. The cafe behind me buzzed on, indifferent. I heard clinking glasses, quiet laughter, the distant whir of an espresso machine. Inside, the man in the gray coat had already gone back to his wine. He didn't look flustered. He didn't rush after her. He didn't even glance at the window. I looked down at the bouquet in my hand. The lilies were perfect, delicate, white, soft-petaled. A few rain droplets still clung to the plastic wrap. I thought about dropping them. Thought about walking in and smashing them across the guy's smug face. But instead, I just stood there. Like a statue. Like an idiot. The neon glow from the cafe flickered faintly, casting a reddish hue on the sidewalk around me. My reflection in the glass looked like someone else, a man on the outside of his own life, peering in through the glass, watching it slip away. Eventually, I turned and walked back to the car. I didn't call her. Didn't drive home right away either. I just drove around the city, letting the engine fill the silence that had crept into our lives long before tonight. I drove past the park where we used to take Sunday walks. Past the apartment we first moved into. Past the bakery where she used to surprise me with coffee on her way back from yoga. All of it felt like someone else's story. When I finally parked outside our house, the porch light was off. No note on the counter. No text. No missed call. I sat on the couch, the lilies next to me on the coffee table, their fragrance already starting to wilt. My hands trembled. My face was numb. And in the deepest part of me, beneath the shock, beneath the denial, I felt it, that slow, quiet breaking. The kind you can't glue back together. I barely slept that night. Not that I didn't try. I shifted on the couch 100 times, neck cramping against the armrest, the air in the house turning stale and heavy. The bouquet of white lilies still sat untouched on the coffee table, half-wilted now, as if even the flowers knew they'd been humiliated. At some point around 3 a.m. I pulled a blanket over myself and stared at the ceiling, replaying the moment Ellie looked me dead in the eye, not with fear or guilt, but with something worse. Annoyance. The look people give you when you've interrupted their lunch, not their affair. By morning I hadn't moved. My phone buzzed once. A calendar reminder for our couple's massage. A gift I booked a few weeks ago. I stared at it until the screen dimmed. I didn't cancel it. I just let it expire. The house felt different that morning. Colder. Still. Like it had absorbed the betrayal and was holding its breath. I walked past the photos on the hallway wall, family pictures that had once meant something. Harper on the swings. Ellie with her arms around both of us, squinting into the sun. I paused at one from our 10th anniversary trip to Bar Harbor. She was wearing that green scarf she loved. I remember thinking that day, we're solid. Fool that I was. I made coffee just to have something to do with my hands. The silence in the house was unbearable, not the peaceful kind, but the loud, hollow sort that made you hyper-aware of every creaking floorboard and tick of the wall clock. That's when my brain kicked into gear. I didn't mean for it to happen, but my mind started going through the months, maybe even the year before. A mental scrapbook of warning signs. Moments I dismissed, justified, or ignored outright. And now each one came back sharp and loud like fire alarms I'd slept through. First, the late nights. Ellie used to come home around 6, 7 if traffic was bad. But lately? 9:30, 10, sometimes later. Always with the same lines, the campaigns in final review, the clients being impossible, we had to reshoot because of lighting. I wanted to believe her. I did believe her. Because she didn't flinch when she said it. She didn't stutter or stammer. She wore her deception like a second skin. Then there was the phone. Always face down. Always silenced. A new password I didn't know. And the way she reacted if I so much as glanced in its direction, like I'd threatened her privacy, like I'd crossed some invisible line. I remember one night, we were watching a movie and her phone buzzed. She snatched it up like it was a live grenade. I joked, CIA messaging you again, expecting a smile. Instead, she mumbled something about a coworker and left the room. I didn't see her again for 20 minutes. And then there were the changes in her appearance. Subtle at first. A new skincare routine. A more intense perfume bolder than what she used to like. She once called it too much when I wore strong colognes. Now she reeked of something floral and sharp, a scent that lingered on her coat long after she left the room. I asked about it once. It's from the office, she said. Someone sprayed it in the elevator. I think it clung to my sweater. I laughed. She didn't. Looking back, I see it wasn't just how she dressed, it was how she carried herself. Confident, alert, like someone with a secret that made her feel powerful. At first, I told myself she was just thriving at work. Maybe getting her groove back. God, I wanted that for her. I rooted for her. I was her biggest fan. But it wasn't confidence. It was detachment. It was distance. Her routines changed too. She started going to the gym again, but only after 9 p.m. She said it helped her decompress. I offered to join her once. She brushed me off with a forced smile and said she needed solo time. I didn't question it. She said I hovered too much. Our weekends became another kind of battlefield. She was always too tired for family things, too busy for movie nights, too overwhelmed to plan day trips. Yet she somehow had time for retreats with her agency team. Day-long strategy sessions at a lake house 3 towns over. She'd come back sun-kissed and exhausted, smelling of firewood and cheap wine. I remember Harper asking her once, "Why didn't you take us?" Ellie laughed and said it wasn't that kind of trip. But I saw something in Harper's eyes that night. She was starting to understand something I wasn't ready to admit. There was one moment I keep going back to, not a fight, not a confrontation. Just a random Tuesday. We were in the kitchen. I was making sandwiches and she walked in, grabbed a banana and turned to leave. I said, "Hey, do you want to eat together?" And she didn't even look up. "I'm running late," she said, already halfway down the hall. 5 words. That's all. But I felt it. That absence. Like I was background noise in my own house. The thing is, you don't notice the cracks at first. They're too small. Easy to miss. But one day you wake up and realize your house is cold because all the windows have been open for months and you never thought to check. She started getting jumpy around conversations too. If I asked simple questions, where were you guys last night, or who's Derek from your office? She got cagey. Defensive. You're acting paranoid, she said once. This isn't an interrogation. I remember swallowing the lump in my throat and backing off. I didn't want to be that guy, the jealous husband. The one who turns love into surveillance. So I let it go. Over and over I let it go. And maybe that's the worst part of it all, realizing I helped this happen. Not directly. Not like she did. But by not trusting my gut. By choosing comfort over confrontation. By assuming love was enough. Spoiler alert, it's not. Love doesn't fix someone who's already halfway out the door. Around noon I wandered into the bedroom and sat on her side of the bed. Her pillows still smelled like that new perfume. A scent I now hated. I opened her nightstand drawer. I wasn't proud of it. But I needed something, a thread, a hint, a note. Instead, I found an empty space where her journal used to be. She must have taken it. She took the journal, but not the mug I bought her for our anniversary last year, the one that said wife, mother, queen in gold lettering. I picked it up, turned it in my hand, and felt the absurdity of it all. Queen of what? The deception? By that afternoon, I'd pulled up our joint calendar, going back through weeks and months. Every shoot and offsite was now suspect. I opened her Instagram. Public. Curated. Nothing suspicious, but that was the point, wasn't it? Her smile in those filtered photos wasn't for me. It hadn't been in a long time. I stared at a post from March. Collaboration feels like magic when you trust your team. The caption was under a photo of Ellie with a few coworkers, one of whom, I now realized, was the man from the cafe. Of course he was. And I had liked the photo. Left a stupid heart emoji in the comments. I closed the app and sat there in silence for a long time. A mental catalog of red flags? More like a damn museum. A week passed. Not the kind of week you live through, but the kind you survive. Ellie stayed out of the house more than in. No explanations. No excuses. She started texting instead of calling, using cold, professional language like, heads up, I'll be late again, and meeting ran long, don't wait up. I didn't respond. I couldn't. What was I supposed to say? No worries, enjoy your boyfriend? Every time I saw her name light up on my screen, my stomach turned. By Wednesday, she'd stopped pretending. She came home once that week, around 11 p.m., still wearing that gray sweater she always said made her feel confident but low effort. Her makeup was fresh, not worn down like someone coming off a 10-hour shift. Her eyes were glazed in that distant way, not tired, but lit from the inside. I knew that glow. I used to be the reason for it. She walked past me like I was furniture. Didn't ask how my day was. Didn't even glance at the half-eaten dinner I left out for her. She was gone before sunrise. I stopped trying to understand her choices. I just wanted proof, something undeniable. I didn't want to be gaslit one more time. I didn't want to hear another, you're imagining things, or we're just friends, or the dreaded it's complicated. I wanted the truth, raw and whole. So I took the Friday off work. She'd mentioned an agency dinner earlier in the week. Said it was a big client. That they'd all be at the event center downtown, some fancy networking mixer with cocktails and presentations. Nothing exciting, she said, not even meeting my eyes. Just long. I nodded and smiled like I always did. Said, sounds exhausting, like the supportive husband I no longer knew how to be. That night I drove home early. I didn't tell her. I didn't call ahead. I parked a few houses down, turned off the headlights, and sat in the dark, engine ticking as it cooled. The house was lit. Kitchen light. Hall light. Music, soft and ambient, leaked through the windows, not the kind of music you play for yourself. The garage was empty. She didn't even bother using the driveway. Smart. She knew I'd notice. She'd gotten sloppy, but not that sloppy. I waited 5 minutes. Maybe 10. Then I walked up the steps and unlocked the door. There was laughter, hers, light and melodic, the way it used to sound when she'd surprise me with takeout on a random Tuesday or splash me with dishwater while I was trying to load the dishwasher. I stood in the hallway and followed the sound to the kitchen. I didn't even have to turn the corner. I already knew. But I did it anyway. She was sitting on the counter, not on a chair, not standing. On the counter. Her legs wrapped around him like she had the right. His shirt was halfway unbuttoned, her hand pressed to his chest like a claim. Her neck arched back as he kissed her. Not fast. Not frantic. Slow. Like this was normal. Like this was home. I didn't make a sound. They didn't see me right away. The man, the same one from the cafe, looked younger in our kitchen light. Clean cut. Soft jaw. Hands that didn't look like they worked for anything. He wore my robe. Not one like it. Mine. The one Ellie gave me for Christmas 2 years ago with the embroidered initials. That's when he saw me. He froze, mid-laugh, like someone had hit pause on a movie. Ellie followed his eyes, turned her head, and there I was. No yelling. No confrontation. No throwing punches or grabbing car keys. I just looked at her. She stared back at me like I was an interruption. An inconvenience. Her lips parted like she might say something. But she didn't. She didn't say a word. I turned around. Walked out. Up the stairs. Down the hall. Into the study. I pulled a single envelope from the drawer, one I'd written the night after the cafe. It was sealed. No name on the front. Just her initials in the corner. A letter I hoped I wouldn't have to deliver, but knew I would. I left it on her desk. Walked back downstairs. The guy was gone. I didn't hear the door, but he was gone. Her back was to me. She was staring at the counter like it had betrayed her. Her hands were clenched. Her breathing was fast. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't say anything. I grabbed my keys, walked out the front door, and drove away for the last time. I didn't go far. I had already rented a place across town, a short-term studio above a bookstore near the river. Quiet. Out of the way. It smelled like coffee and paper and wetwood. There was one window, one sink, and just enough space for a bed and a desk. But it was mine. No shared closets. No ghost perfume. No lies. I brought only what I needed, a duffel bag of clothes, my laptop, and the last 3 Father's Day cards Harper made for me. They were crooked and misspelled and sacred. I taped them to the wall above my bed. The first night, I sat on the floor with a beer and stared at the ceiling. I felt empty. But not broken. Not anymore. I thought I'd cry. I didn't. I thought I'd scream. I didn't. I just felt relieved. Like the pretending was finally over. I didn't sleep, but I did something close to resting, that drifting state where the noise in your head finally lowers enough to think clearly. The next morning, my phone lit up with 9 missed calls. All Ellie. No voicemails. Then the texts came. Ben, please, can we talk? I didn't expect you to come home early. This is a mess. I'm sorry. Don't do anything stupid. You're being emotional. That last one made me laugh out loud. Emotional? No. I was past emotional. I was done. Later that day, I pulled up the app linked to the security cameras I'd installed at the house 2 years ago after a break-in. I'd forgotten about them, or maybe I hadn't. Maybe part of me always knew I'd need them. There they were. All 4 cameras. Still active. Living room. Kitchen. Back door. Upstairs hallway. She never changed the login. Within 24 hours of me leaving, he came back. Brazen. Comfortable. She cooked for him. Poured my whiskey. Put her feet in his lap like they'd been doing this for months, maybe longer. At one point, she walked through the living room, drink in hand, and said, "It's kind of freeing not being monitored all the time." He laughed. She laughed. And I just sat there, listening with my headphones on, every word crisp and clear. Every betrayal recorded. She had no idea I was still watching. Still listening. Still documenting. That night, I watched the footage on loop. Paused it. Studied it. Not because I missed her. I didn't. But because I needed to understand the version of Ellie who could do this. Who could kiss another man in our kitchen, then look me in the eye like I was the problem. She had taken off the mask, and this was the face beneath it. I thought of Harper. I thought of the house I built for them, the backyard swing set I stained with my own hands, the bedroom paint Ellie picked out with swatches and Pinterest boards. I thought about the promises. Then I pulled out my notebook. And I started making a plan. I didn't respond to her texts. Not one. Not the guilt-laced, "we need to talk," or the manipulative, "you're overreacting." Not even the desperate, "please, just give me a chance to explain." I let her words stack like unread mail, collecting in my phone's notification center, white noise in the background of my new life. I wasn't angry. I was aware. That's what changed. When you've been lied to long enough, you start seeing silence as the only real truth. I spent the first few days in the studio barely speaking. I didn't need to. The quiet was good. It was clean. No half-hearted apologies. No strained laughter. Just the occasional hum of a ceiling fan and the creak of the floor when I got up to refill my coffee. I made a schedule: wake up at 7, walk the river path behind the bookstore, shower, answer emails, review consulting projects, make dinner. Repeat. I needed rhythm. I needed control. And after what I'd seen in my own kitchen, I wasn't about to leave anything up to chance again. That's when I remembered the cameras. 2 years ago, our house had been broken into. Nothing major, just a smashed window and a couple of electronics missing, but it rattled Ellie. She insisted we install a full security system. I handled it. Cameras at every major point, kitchen, living room, back door, hallway. Discrete, high-res, synced to a cloud-based server. She hated the blinking red light, so I disabled the visible indicator. I never told her I left the cameras active when we downgraded the monitoring plan. She thought the system was cosmetic now. Dead. I knew better. I logged in the day after I moved out. All 4 feeds were still alive. The first time I clicked Live View, I expected hesitation. Some part of me thought, don't do this. Give her privacy. You've left, let it go. But that part of me was still married. Still naive. The rest of me? I needed eyes on the battlefield. Within 48 hours, he was back. Same guy. Same casual arrogance. Wearing my robe again because, apparently, I wasn't using it. Drinking my whiskey like he'd paid for it. He was comfortable now. Feet on the ottoman. Refrigerator door hanging open like he lived there. I even caught him grabbing Harper's favorite mug from the cabinet, the yellow one with the cat drawing she painted in art camp 2 summers ago. That was the first time I clenched my fists. Not because he used it, but because Ellie didn't stop him. She didn't say, that's Harper's. She didn't say, don't touch that. She didn't say anything. She just watched him drink from it and laughed when he called the design ugly but endearing. Endearing. That was my daughter's mug. I muted the feed and sat back in my chair. So this was it. The part of betrayal no one prepares you for, not the big blowout, but the slow reveal of how replaceable you are. Of how your life doesn't stop for the people who break it. It just gets rewritten. Decorated with new voices, new habits, new lies. But I kept watching. Not every hour. Not obsessively. Just enough. I saw her wipe down the kitchen counters. Saw her light the expensive candles I bought on our anniversary trip to Vermont, the ones she said were too strong for guests. I watched her laugh at his dumb jokes. I watched her curl up on the couch in the same position she used to rest against me. One night, she played the piano. Badly. She always told people she could kind of play. Truth was, she knew 4 chords and 1 full song. I used to tease her about it, especially when she tried to sing along. But this time she wasn't alone. He joined in. Sang harmony. I muted the feed again. I didn't need to hear their version of what used to be mine. What hit hardest wasn't the kissing or the wine or even the robe. It was how natural it looked. How easy. No shame. No tension. Just a woman who'd rewritten her reality so thoroughly she didn't need to pretend anymore. I don't know what I expected. Guilt, maybe? Some sign she missed me. But if anything, she looked lighter. Freer. It's kind of freeing not being monitored all the time, she said one night as she passed the camera in the hallway. He laughed. Ben always had that controlling vibe. Controlling. That was rich, coming from the woman who once asked for location sharing because she felt anxious when I traveled. I closed the app and stared at the wall for a while. Controlling? No. Prepared? Yes. Because while she was playing house with her new toy, I was building a firewall. I called the bank the next morning. Closed her joint credit card. Froze the savings account. She hadn't touched it yet. But I wasn't waiting for the moment she, accidentally, booked a weekend getaway to the mountains under our name. I moved my direct deposits into a new account under my name only and activated multi-factor authentication on everything I could. 2-step logins. Random passwords. New PINs. I even replaced the security questions on our mortgage profile because I knew she could guess my mother's maiden name and the city I was born in. I made the new answer something random and unguessable. The name of my 5th grade science teacher's cat. A detail so obscure, even I had to dig through a dusty yearbook to remember it. That same afternoon, I met with a lawyer. I didn't announce it, didn't warn her. I just made the appointment, sat down across from a sharp-eyed woman named Dana Porter, and explained the situation. I'm not trying to ruin her life, I said. I just want to protect mine. Dana nodded, flipping through her notes. You've already done more than most people in your situation. You're ahead. Is that good? It's essential, she said. Quiet defense is the most effective kind. I handed her a thumb drive. Security footage? Among other things. Emails. Calendar screensh *TS. Bank statements. Everything Ellie thought was invisible. Turns out, she wasn't nearly as careful as she believed. She'd opened a private account 2 months ago. Small transfers from her work card, spread out to avoid attention. $100 here, $50 there. I traced it. Different bank entirely. Different city branch. A clever little stash. Maybe for a hotel, maybe a just-in-case fund. Either way, she never mentioned it. Dana reviewed the files without blinking. "This'll help." "I don't want a war," I said. "Just the truth." "You already have it," she said, clicking the folder shut. I left her office feeling more centered than I had in weeks. Not happy. Not vindicated. Just grounded. When I got back to the studio, I checked my phone. Ellie had posted on Instagram for the first time since I left. A photo of her walking through a park. Filtered. Serene. The caption, "Storms pass. Stillness returns." I laughed. Out loud. A dry, bitter sound that scared even me. She was painting herself as the victim. And I knew what that meant. She'd beg * end the second phase, the narrative crafting. The subtle smears. The friend group drift. The "I'm worried about Ben" whispers. I got confirmation that weekend when a mutual friend, Alyssa, texted to check in. "Hey, Ellie said you've been struggling. Just wanted to make sure you're okay. Let me know if you want to talk." I didn't respond. Let her spin her story. I wasn't here to defend my name in group chats. I was building my next move in silence. That there's a moment after betrayal where you have to decide. Will you burn the whole thing down? Or will you build something quietly stronger from the ashes? I chose the latter. Not because I wasn't angry. I was, but not the loud kind. Not the kind that throws chairs or screams in driveways. My anger had cooled into something harder. Sharper. Cold enough to cut without making a sound. Ellie wanted a reaction. I could feel it in her silence. She expected an explosion. She expected drama. That would have made things easier for her story. If I'd cursed her out or stormed into our house demanding answers, she could have told people, "See? He's unstable. See? This is why I left." But I gave her nothing. She wanted heat. I gave her frost. And in that quiet, I started building a wall she couldn't see. The first layer? Financial defense. The day after meeting Dana, I pulled up every bank account we'd ever touched. Current, savings, investment, Harper's education fund. Everything. I went transaction by transaction. Some of it was familiar: Target runs, groceries, her gym membership. But buried among the routine were patterns. Small ones. Transfer amounts that didn't make sense. Tips at restaurants I didn't recognize. One time she withdrew $240 in cash 2 days before she claimed she was out of town for a corporate shoot. She had opened a private account. I traced it by cross-referencing withdrawal locations and timestamps with our calendar. Ellie had been skimming money off her agency's card and funneling it into a separate account in her name alone. Not a lot, just enough to stay hidden. I printed everything, labeled each page. Paper trail, digital copy, thumb drive. Dana called it smart. I called it insurance. Next, I updated all my own accounts, changed every password, switched banks, locked down Harper's fund with a cosigner clause. I even updated my will just in case. Petty? Maybe. But I wasn't leaving any door open. Because Ellie wasn't just rewriting our marriage. She was already pre-writing her alibi. I saw it starting to unfold through mutuals. Friends who used to post photos of the three of us now shared vague quotes about healing, letting go, and toxic people. She was planting seeds. At work, I started hearing whispers too. We shared industry circles. Marketing's a small pond in a city like ours. Ellie's agency began floating around a subtle version of the story that I'd been distant, that our marriage had been strained, that I had a control complex. That last one stuck. Because it was the same phrase she used in the hallway, not knowing the cameras were on. Ben always had that controlling vibe. So she wasn't just rewriting the ending. She was revising the beginning. Fine. I didn't correct anyone. I didn't post a Notes app statement. I didn't respond to texts that asked, "What really happened?" I didn't confide in coworkers or family. I just kept watching, documenting, preserving. That in itself was power. It felt strange living in a studio apartment while the person who betrayed me woke up in a house I built. A house with my tools in the garage, my books on the shelves, my wedding ring in the drawer by the sink. But I didn't miss the place. What I missed, if I missed anything, was the version of myself who believed our life was still real. Who thought our problems were normal and fixable. That guy was gone. And honestly, he wasn't that smart. One night, I opened the camera app and caught them again. They were having dinner. He was grilling. My grill. He used too much lighter fluid. Flames **T up for a second. Ellie jumped and laughed. He looked proud of himself, waving a spatula like a champion caveman. I turned the sound off. I watched in silence as they sat down at the patio table. The one I sanded and sealed the summer Harper was 6. I remembered that day Harper got splinters trying to help. Ellie laughed so hard she cried. Back when her laughter wasn't someone else's prize. They toasted. She leaned across the table and kissed him. It was like watching strangers in a house that no longer belonged to me. The difference was, now I didn't feel loss. I felt confirmation. The next morning, I forwarded Dana the latest clip. Just 30 seconds. Labeled by date. Stored in a folder marked Exhibit C. She replied with one word, received. I spent that afternoon drafting a personal inventory, not emotional, but practical. Here's what I owned outright. Here's what we bought together. Here's what she could legally access. Here's what I could prove was misused. Dana called it pre-negotiation leverage. I called it therapy. There was satisfaction in organizing the mess, in turning pain into spreadsheets, in reclaiming order from chaos. Ellie thought she had the upper hand because she moved on first. But moving on fast doesn't mean moving on well. I knew she hadn't told Harper yet. That's why I stayed quiet. I wasn't going to be the one who ruined her image to our daughter. Let Ellie explain why Daddy suddenly moved out. Let her navigate that minefield. But I didn't wait forever. The following week, I asked Harper to meet me at the park. Just her and me. She sat on the swing, tracing circles in the mulch with her shoe, too old to swing now but too young to say what she was really thinking. I sat beside her. I moved out, I said. She nodded. I figured. Things with your mom and I, they're not working. I'm sorry. Another nod. Eyes down. Did she tell you why? Pause. She said you've been distant. I stared ahead at the trees. She waited. Kids always wait longer than adults. They're patient in the way that hurts. That's not the whole truth, I said. But I'm not going to put you in the middle. She didn't speak, but she did lean against my shoulder. We sat there until the sun dropped below the trees. She didn't cry. Neither did I. But something between us, the real between us, stayed intact. That night, I didn't check the cameras. I didn't check my phone. I just sat at the desk in my little studio, opened a blank document, and started writing what would become my final move. Not an attack. Not a warning. A mirror. I wasn't going to scream. I was going to show her who she really was. One piece of evidence at a time. And when the time came, I'd place it all on the kitchen table. Neatly arranged. Undeniable. No yelling. No begging. Just truth. Laid bare. 1 month later, I returned to the house. Ellie was home, fresh from a jog, hair tied up, sweat still glistening. I said nothing. Just placed a thick folder on the kitchen table and walked out. Inside, divorce papers, printed bank statements, **TS, camera footage, everything. I'd already spoken to Harper, already moved on emotionally. I didn't wait for her response. I didn't need it. Ellie's version of the story began to unravel. Friends pulled away. Her agency quietly reassigned her to a background role. The walls she'd built with lies started caving in under the weight of truth. And I didn't lift a finger. 8 months later, I lived in a glass front cabin by a quiet lake. I'd rebuilt my consulting firm, partnered with a local archive, and found peace in solitude. Ellie tried reaching out, but I never answered. On my 49th birthday, Harper came by with a bottle of bourbon and a fishing pole. We sat by the fire, the lake calm behind us. And in that stillness, I finally understood I hadn't just survived betrayal. I'd shed the skin of who I was. The man left behind under that cafe sign was gone. What stood in his place was someone whole. Certain. Free.